buddy who's not at work that might hop on and
Yeah, I
walk.
think George should be home. He's usually home. I think Ron's on. No, Ron's off today, so he should be able to. I had told them 5, but then I sent a message, told me to be closer to 5:30 because I had just got home. So
Yeah, Ron. I sent Ron a message earlier, just responding from something from this morning, and he messaged back almost immediately. So yeah, I kind of figured he was at home.
yeah,
So here we are, round two, or take two for a different topic. So I did go ahead and plug in the topic. So I'm sure folks will see that we are. I just took what you had shared out, the 10 supremely underrated albums by major bands. And of course, whether or not something's a major band is subjective, and we'll see if anybody pushes back against the choices.
I have I have some that people are going to be like, "That album sucked." I'll be like, "Well, to you maybe." Got my handy dandy knife to get these new ones out to shrink.
Nice. Very
I'm gonna
nice.
go ahead and start with what I picked up that's going to be getting spun tonight. Um, if I
By the
go
way, I
ahead.
like the shirt.
Thanks.
That's
That was
a real album I don't have.
yeah. I don't have it either, unfortunately. I got this from Ron when he was uh, purging his closet.
Yeah, that's a cool one.
So I was down in Sumter, where I'm originally from, handling some business, and I usually stop into Music Gator, which is a local shop, and picked up 3 albums, and I was like, "You got to come home with me." This first one is a record store day release, and it's the Atlanta Live in 1982 from Priest.
Yeah.
That I was very shocked to see that we're still some around. I thought I was going to probably have to try and maybe go on Amazon. But it comes on this nice red. It's not this the same tour where they had the '82 Vengeance concert from Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably has a lot of the same track listings. Funny thing is, so looking on this album cover, you might not really be able to tell, but it's got some of the other album covers on there. It's like Angel Retribution's right here.
Yeah.
Let's
Sad
see.
Wings. I can see Sad Wings on there.
Redeemer of Souls is right here.
Yeah. Which is
Uh,
odd. I've seen that. Somebody pointed it out, and I was wondering why for an '82 tour they did that montage. But
I
it
don't know
looks
because
cool.
they did that similarly in that best of box set that they had out.
That came after Killer.
Yeah, that had the Priest logo, and inside the logo, the cross part, it had different shots from all the album covers as well. Like I see Turbo, Defenders, Nostradamus, Killing Machine, Painkiller. I think that's supposed to be Turbo. Maybe. Hold on. No, Rockarola, Jugulator, which is very shocking.
Huh.
Sin After Sin, Ram It Down, British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance.
Well, here's the question. George is on. How's it going, George?
And Firepower's up in this corner here. There's Turbo there.
Is that a Columbia release?
I don't know.
See, if it were Columbia,
Yeah.
it would make me
Yeah.
think. Okay. Yeah, I just wondered how much input the band had into that.
Yeah, so the track listing I'll go through real quick. Damn it, get in here. You got they'll open with Hellion Electric Eye, Riding on the Wind, heading out to the highway, Metal Gods, Bloodstone, Breaking the Law, Sinner, Desert Plains, and the Ripper are disc 1. Disc 2 is Diamonds and Rust, Devil's Child, which I think is a great song. Ron disagrees. He thinks that's like one of the worst ones on Screaming, and I think that's just dumb. Devil's Child.
Yeah, it's not, it's all right.
Screamer for Vengeance, You Got Another Thing Coming, Victim of Changes, Living After Midnight, Greening Man Alicia, and they finish off with Hellbent for Leather. And there's the back cover.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a good score, and that's one I missed picking up. Um, I'm sure the longer I wait, the harder it'll be to find that, but that's a good one to pick up.
Another live album I was able to pick up, and this is my first reissue for this band. All my other albums I got from them are all original copies, OG copies from the 70s and 80s. And this is my first live album from them on record. I did have a live album they put out on the it was just ACDC live. There was two versions, one with one disc, one with two
Mm-hmm.
on the
Yep.
they did it for the Razor's Edge tour.
Yes.
And here's the If You Want Blood.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And you've got Riff Raff, Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, Bad Boy Boogie, The Jack, Problem Child, Whole Lot of Rosie, Rock and Roll Damnation, High Voltage, Let There Be Rock and Rocker. And this was reissued in, it says 2003, but that's kind of odd for a reissue on vinyl because I don't think in the very early 2000s this was coming back. So originally a 78 release, so right before they released Highway to Hell. It's got a pretty cool insert here.
Yeah, that's their reissues in the last, I'll say maybe 20 years. They've done a good job with including photos from that time period and little write ups, because I've gotten a bunch of them. I've got most of them, the reissues on CD, but I picked up some of the more recent gold versions of the vinyl re releases.
This next one is an older album. This was from 2020, but from an older band.
Ah, yeah.
Symbol Remains from
Cool.
Blue Oyster Cult. I have not heard this album. When it came out, and still to this day, to my understanding, it's not available on Amazon Prime Music. So I was like, I'm just gonna wait, maybe see if a copy happens to show up, and it did show up for $19.
Nice. That's,
Yeah,
or
so
double. I
so
would
for
imagine that's a
a
double record.
double album for an album that's not even 5 years, depending on when exactly it was released. 5 years old. Um, for $19, that's
Yeah.
not
And
bad.
my guess is that's probably Frontier Records out of Italy. I think that's an import.
Yep, Frontiers.
Yeah, good score.
Amazing how people can look at a record and be like, I know exactly what company that is and where they're out of. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you. I don't have that. I don't have any of their later day albums. So
I don't either.
anything from like the 90s on, I don't, or the mid 90s, I don't have. But yeah, so I couldn't tell you who performed on that album. I couldn't tell you what year it was released, but I can tell you the record company.
Up until that point, the latest I have is Cultosaurus.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That's like, I think that's like early to mid 80s.
Yeah, even some of the late 80s ones, they're not as great as the 70s or
Oh
the
yeah,
early,
yeah.
but
70s
they're
Colts
good
obviously
ones.
the best. 70s Colts the best. And
Oh yeah.
Ron and I get on this disagreement all the time between 70s and 80s Priest. And in my opinion, I love all decades of Priest, but 70s Priest blows 80s Priest out of the water.
It's, yeah, I have a hard time. I kind of love it all, so
Even
I'm
though my favorite Priest album actually came out in 90. What are you looking for?
Painkiller.
The dog.
Yeah, Painkiller kind of that stands heads above the others just because of them. Not to say, Turbo and Ram It Down are decent albums, and actually I'm the oddball that prefers Ram It Down over Turbo.
I
Uh,
do.
I just,
I
song for
think the
song I
songs are
think
better.
better.
Even though I understand that the premise was it was supposed to be one double album.
Yeah.
To me, there's definitely a distinct. So I don't know how much of Turbo, how much of Ram It Down was already recorded, which I don't think much of it had been recorded at the time of Turbo. But you've got the difference in a live drummer and a drum machine.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit more of a thicker production, I think, on Ram It Down, and I think the songs are better on Ram It Down. Now, I had recently picked up Turbo. I was waiting till I could find it at a decent enough price because it's not one of my favorite Priest albums. And the guy was wanting to sell it for 20. I was like, "Could you go 10?" He's like, "I can go 15." I was like, "Perfect, I'll take it for
Mm.
15."
Was that
Because
OG original copy?
yeah, yeah. With Priest, I am a completist. Regardless of how terrible Demolition is, I do eventually plan on getting at least a CD copy of that.
Mm.
Because there are some good songs on it.
Yeah. There's some-
Priest, to me, Priest never had a complete garbage album. I do think Turbo and Point of Entry came kind of close. But there's still standout tracks that they do live a lot too, like Turbo Lover they still do, and Heading Out to the Highway. I
Mhm.
actually think Point of Entry is better than what some other people give it. I give it a five
I
out of
like.
10. I
I
think
like.
Solar Angels is a just a banger song. Desert Plains, obviously. I don't mind Hot Rockin'. I don't think it's a bad song. I can understand where people may see, going from British Steel to that album. I understand.
I don't see a huge difference between them, though. I see them as sister albums the same way most people see Turbo and Ram It Down. They're very stylistically very similar. I do see a few what would be weaker songs, on the second one, but
Right.
yeah, I've been kind of waiting for that video for the British Steel because that's not one of my favorite Priest albums. It's not. I wouldn't put it in my top five. I don't know if it would go in my top 10, but there's great tracks on it, and then
I think there's just so many great albums from their 70s catalog, notwithstanding the first one. Um,
yeah, yeah,
that it would be hard for me to get British Steel in there. I would probably go Painkiller 1, Defenders 2, Stained Class 3, uh, Killing Machine probably
mhm,
4,
yeah.
and I would probably put
Sad Wings.
no, I'd probably go Screaming 5. And I
Mm,
know I'm in a huge minority with Sad Wings. I know a lot of people, especially the people that like grew up with Priest, are like, Sad Wings is their favorite Priest album. But I'm going to be honest. I think that album's half filler. I think you've got Ripper, which is an awesome song. Victim of Changes is great. Genocide and Tyrant are just badass songs. But then
mhm.
you got Dreamer Deceiver, um, Island of Domination. It's like, okay. Epitaph is all right.
Yeah,
So it's like I said, it's not a terrible album. I think the best songs on there bring it up higher. Um, I, I just think it's kind of a half and a half album for me.
yeah. I can understand that. So I'm gonna pull out the two that I got yesterday, just because I know you'll appreciate these. And actually, you mentioned Ripper. So that I have these in the set. There was a set that this is Iced Earth and the something Wicked Part One. So I got a set that came with both the Part One and Part Two, and I think it had two EPs and then a bonus CD. So I've had these on CD, but they were re-released. I don't know, within the last 2 or 3 years, and
Was that one EP, the Overture of the Wicked, where he redid the Barlow songs at the very end of Something Wicked?
so this one, yes, and this is the one with Ripper on it. So it is
Framing Armageddon?
it touches on that three song medley that they did, um, the Something Wicked album, and then of course if I got that one, I also had to get
Crucible of Man, excellent.
the part two. So this one's got Barlow on it, and both are double record, double vinyl, and I loved the color
Ooh,
scheme because that kind of goes with that. Let's see, got, yep. There's a little bit of purple kind of mixed in there, some darker blue
yeah.
and So I've been slowly starting to fill in gaps in the iced earth as far as my record collection. Some of the
How
gaps.
how
Uh,
pricey were those? How pricey were those?
35 for each.
Okay,
I
that's not
got Hell's headbangers, and they still have them. I believe they still have copies, and it was 35. So I'm like, it's I'm not going to find those any cheaper anywhere else. I'm getting them from.
yeah. Yeah, Amazon, you'll be triple digits at least.
Oh yeah, and to
And
get
then
them
Dylan
because those are Flagga, and I maybe Holland. They're somewhere over in Europe, and if you were going to buy them directly from there, of course you're paying for the extra shipping. And I feel like Shadow Kingdom and Hell's Headbangers sometimes they'll. I feel like they maybe eat the cost of the shipping a little bit, or because they're getting it in bulk, they're not passing that
right,
shipping on to the
right,
those of us here in the states.
and that is we're most appreciated for that.
Yeah, that's why you
Because
were
sometimes
talking
you end
about the
up paying more
email.
for shipping than you paid for the record. Like that happened to me one time. It wasn't like huge or anything, but my copy of Welcome to My Nightmare from Alice Cooper was like 99 cents off eBay.
Mm,
And I'm talking about a clean copy, clean cover, clean record. And I paid like $3 in shipping. But it's
sweet.
like I paid a dollar for the record. I paid more for shipping than the record. But
That's okay. You're getting a
yeah,
I don't mind spending $10 on shipping if I'm getting an album for a few dollars. I'm like, if
right.
it's in good condition, it's worth it. So
Right.
let's see.
You
We
want
have it looks like eight. I think we have eight people on, and George posted Point of Entry is a good album, and yeah, I one that it doesn't knock me over, but I there's some songs on there that I think it's
yeah.
underrated. I definitely could have picked that one for today's, and I didn't. It wasn't actually one I thought, but
I didn't
that's
pick
a
that
great starting.
one uh, simply because I don't think it's good enough to really be considered like
Supremely.
supremely underrated or underrated at all. Like it's probably a little underrated. Um, but if it was something like people were trashing on Painkiller or something like that, like Painkiller sucks. I mean that's completely different. But
Yeah, that's fighting words.
yeah, oh yeah. I'm bringing out the heavy artillery on that one. I'll come find where you live.
Yeah.
Why don't you
All
go ahead and show your first one?
right. Okay. All right. So and folks will have to. I apologize for the glare. So I'll have to kind of find my sweet spot here. But Deliverance, what a joke! Third album. I'm a huge Deliverance fan. Love Jimmy Brown. Anything that he puts out, even the more recent stuff. But this is pure thrash. Yes, it's got some of the silly, the intro and chipped beef and just some kind of spoofy stuff in there, kind of like you would get from MOD or SOD. But this
Right.
is awesome. The riffs in this, Georgia Cho is playing, is every bit as good on this album as anything else that he did. And of course, Jimmy Brown's an excellent guitar player too. So
What's
uh,
up, Ron?
a lot of fans, I think, kind of downplay that album, especially because the first two were such spectacular thrash albums. But this one's great too.
Right. All right. Well, my first one, since we were talking about this guy's original band, so a small deadly space from Fight.
Mm,
Now, the debut, there's not a lot that's going to touch that. I mean, that was Rob Halford going street metal, basically.
yeah, Pantera.
Um, yeah, and I think a lot of having them open for Priest on parts of the Painkiller tour, I think is kind of what opened him up to doing something heavier.
Hmm.
Now, this is not that. It's definitely not that, but I do think it's a precursor that kind of leads you to show where he would end up when he did the two project. And there's some really good songs on here. Mouthpiece, Blowout in the Radio Room, Gretna Green, Beneath the Violence, Human Crate. These are some really, really good songs. And if people would um, if people would give the two project an actual chance for what it is, it's an industrial metal album, is
Yeah.
what that. And I don't. Obviously, I think people were kind of torn because he went from Priest and the first Fight record. They completely ignored this one, which if they had really digested this one, they could see where the two thing kind of evolved from.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that was that album. I liked it. I felt like it was a little bit of a step down from War of Words. Um, I never got to. There were a lot of the bands that, even though I liked industrial music, when Danzig went that route and when Halford went that route, I didn't. I guess I was too much of a purist when it came to their music that I didn't care. Um, Meanwhile, if Marilyn Manson, because they can kind of start it off that way,
Yeah.
I would be more inclined
I think if
to
if
art.
I think if Danzig had left the industrial album to just the one album, if
Mm,
he had just left it to Black Cast the Devil, but then he turns around with the next one, to me, I just don't think it worked well with his vocal style. I think
yeah,
he's too bluesy of a vocalist, and I just think overall it just wasn't something that worked. I understand, wanting to branch out things like that. I just didn't think it was something that really suited him.
yeah.
But I think Halford's got so much of a different range of what he could do that I didn't think it was such a bad choice for him.
Well, two's one of those albums I do need to, if I found a cheapy copy, a CD copy, I'd pick it up just to check it out because I've
Yeah.
gone I've gone a long time with not listening to it. So yeah, it's definitely one I should could search.
Did you ever hear the K5 War of Words demos?
No, no, I know what you're talking about. No, I
So
have.
I actually have a copy on CD that I got earlier this year, and I'd heard it before. I actually had it downloaded because it came out in '07. And I think and there's four previously unreleased songs, so I don't know if they were something that was sitting in the bag or they actually went to the studio and did those new songs.
Mm,
You got that. You got nine of the original 12 songs from the album in some variation or another. Then there's, let's see, 12 plus 4, 9 plus 4 is 13. And I think there's three other demo track songs that never made it. But it's definitely worth the pickup, even though the songs that did make it to the album are of a different variation, but not too far off.
hmm. Yeah, I, I definitely keep my eyes out for. There's a lot of Halford stuff that I've not gotten. And of course, some his Christmas stuff. I haven't figure on any of that, but
Yeah, the K5 is on Amazon.
okay. Well, I will look into that. All right, my next one. I don't know how underrated. I've always felt like this album was underrated. Um, Growing up on Long Island, Beastie Boys and Anthrax were two of my favorites. So, I'm the Man probably caught on to Among the Living towards the tail end after it had been released. But this album, I don't know. It's, some fans love it. Some say it's the decline. I don't hear a decline on this. I love Among the Living, Spreading the Disease. Most of the songs I really like, but I
I
think this album holds up just as well to either of those two albums.
I think it's very similar to when we talked about Slayer um combining two albums in an album where they combined Rain and Blood and South of Heaven for
Yeah,
Seasons. I think
yeah,
that's a combination of Among the Living and Spreading Disease. I think that album, I'm with you, is totally underrated.
yeah.
I almost picked it, but I had so many others in mind that I was like, if I don't say it, no big deal.
Yeah, well, we want to make sure we cover we cover a wide berth here. Ron said that State is totally underrated. Good choice. I would have shown that too. So yeah, I would hope most Anthrax fans appreciate this. Um, Persistence of Time was fantastic too, but
Right.
I felt like this one should definitely be within the top three best Anthrax albums. And that's my
George says it's his second favorite.
yeah, cool. Good. Well, I'm glad. I'd rather be proven wrong. Hopefully, it's not underrated. But
Ron also says that War of Words is the second best Priest record that was that. Let me see exactly how he said
yeah,
it.
never record.
Only under. Let's see where he said it here. War of Words, the best album Priest never recorded, and
And
he
see,
said
I feel that way about Halford's first solo album, the one that the Halford album that came. I can't
Alfred. Yeah,
remember the title. I think Ron was talking about that the other night. The one that has the song with Bruce Dickinson. That
yeah,
album
the
was,
one you love to hate. Yep.
yeah, that album was just, to me, it was pure Priest.
That tour that they had, where they had Maiden, Queensryche, and Halford together, like right at that time, was like, wow. I would have loved to be able to find a way to get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Resurrection was great. I think Crucible was really good too, and I think a lot of people, it's kind of more melodic in parts, and maybe
Hmm.
some people didn't like it. I thought it was heavier in some aspects than the first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I could see that.
All right, my second one, we're gonna go to Canada. This band really kind of started more as a technical thrash band, but by this time they weren't doing that. Outer Limits from Voivod. This
Yes.
I love everything Voivod, and it's a shame I don't have more of their stuff. I have like three records and one on CD. Um, they are to me nice. They are to me
Love that.
probably the best non-power metal style progressive metal band. If
Yeah.
that kind of makes any sense. Like they're not Sabotage, they're not Queensryche or something like that. But I just think they do so many things and incorporate them where it's like you're not confused to what's going on. They really blend the things well.
And that's the last album that Piggy had full input in. I know there were pieces of his guitar playing in some of the I think the next two albums, but that one, yeah, that one was full prog sci-fi. I love that
Yeah,
album. I that's one of that, and Dimension of
thanks, Ross.
Hatred.
Yeah,
That one, and I for Nothing Face was the first one I ever heard from them, but oh, yeah, one of my favorite bands.
Ron. Ron says Voivod's his favorite Canadian band.
Yeah.
Killer album. 14-minute track is great. Of
Uh
course, he thinks a 14-minute track is great because he loves Doom, and Doom's 17 and a half minutes most of the time, at least.
huh. Yeah, and I'm a big sci-fi nerd, so a lot of stuff like that too.
Yeah,
That incorporate any kind of aliens or whatever. That anything that would be labeled sci-fi is cool.
right.
So all right. So this next one, definitely not sci-fi, but I feel extremely overlooked, especially by the fans of the band. Of course, a lot of people like to throw out Dogman as their best, or Gretchen,
Yeah,
my first King's X album, and I absolutely love every track on Gretchen. I wouldn't say every track on here is killer. Um, it's not as melodic as maybe their first two or first three, but it is just a great rocking album, and I think it's just kind of overlooked by a lot of maybe King's X fans, or maybe those that they like listening to a little bit of the band but not digging into super deep.
right. I was really close to buying Tapehead today, but I was like, I don't know. Let me go see what else is out there. And then when I went to the kind of the actual rock and metal section, because he has a section that's kind of like you really don't know what you're getting when you flip through, because you could be going from the Isley Brothers to the King's X, pretty
Mm.
quickly. So I'm not a huge King's X guy. I listen to them here and there, so I'll just kind of take your word for it. Ron says they're an underrated band overall. Should have been bigger.
Yeah.
Uh, he says he would pick Tapehead, and of course, he just told me don't pass on Tapehead. Well, I did. It's kind of too late.
You'll have more opportunities. I've seen them live three times, and the last time, which was I think 2 years ago, was the best concert. So even though those guys are aging, they're still putting on phenomenal shows. They're fantastic.
I already know this one's going to have a lot of controversy, at least from Ron's perspective and from George's as well. But I don't care. I love this album. Demonic from Testament. Man, this thing's heavy as hell. I mean, I understand it's not a Testament album. It sounds more death metal. That's great. I love Testament and death metal, and the fact they combine the two is even better. They got heavier than Low, which was kind of heavy for at that time. But this album right here, I absolutely love this album, and I don't care who finds out about it. And it looks like Rick says he loves Demonic too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. I've got that one on CD. I haven't gotten around to getting a record copy, but it's a good hard hitting album.
Only
Any
thing I don't love is the color. I can't stand doo-doo brown colored vinyl. There's a not Sepultura, uh, um, Soulfly album, Ritual. That's that color too.
mm,
Great
yeah,
album, terrible vinyl color.
yeah. Well, this next one, I was gonna say, I'm not sure.
Ron says nope, nope, nope to Demonic.
Yeah, it's not. It would not definitely not be high on my list. That actually could be one of the lowest one. But even the lowest, and no knock on Low itself, but even a Low Testament is still a great album because I
Right.
love that.
Testament has a very high bar. So even if you say it's my seventh favorite Testament album, that's still saying something.
Yeah, yep. Chuck Billy, love him. So next one is not an underrated artist. I don't know anybody other than an Ozzy snob who won't listen to anything but Ozzy. I think most metalheads are not gonna put Dio as an underrated, but I do think this album for me, this is love this album. I got it when it was first released on CD, and I loved every single song.
I think you had a post or something with that, and I commented on it. And I think that's kind of how I ended up actually thinking of this idea of underrated albums. That is a very underrated Dio album. It
Yeah,
definitely is. I don't think
yeah,
it doesn't get. I get it. It comes after Dream Evil, and then he does this one, and then he goes back to Sabbath for a little bit to do Dehumanizer, and comes out with just these bangers one after another right after that Sabbath return. But Lock Up the Wolves is not one to be slept on.
no. And Dream Evil, I appreciate it for the performances and the guitar playing's great on it. And same thing with Sacred, but I'd actually have to put this up there with the first two, not higher.
I
They
can't
might
go
be
that route
third.
because Dream Evil is my favorite from the Dio catalog.
Hmm. And I know other people that say that too, and that's where I'm a little weird where I put this over Dream Evil, but I heard this before Dream Evil, and I just
Mm.
Lost
I
Wolves,
did
a
too.
wild
I
one.
did too.
The songs just hooked me. It was around the same time that I think Alice Cooper Trash came out, and I both of those albums were they hooked me well.
Ron says I'd show Dream Evil. I think people crap on that one for no reason, and he
Yeah,
said it's also his favorite.
it definitely shouldn't be crapped on. It's
That's not how you crap on
it got
anything Dio was ever a part of, like at all. I mean, unless you're just not a Dio guy, and if that's the case, then why are you commenting? Why are you listening if you don't fucking like him?
I would even say Elf. I mean, yeah, if you're not, I guess if you're not into '70s rock, you might not appreciate Elf, but I think Dio was
I
awesome.
mean,
Elf too.
honestly, you'd probably have to go back to Ronnie and the Prophets. Maybe. I don't know. What do I want to do now? What do I want to do now? Oh, I know one's going to be very controversial. I love controversy, by the way. So, 90s output from this band, I know, is really not looked on as great as their 80s run. And I get it. And I'm not saying this is in my top five, but please quit hating on No Prayer for the Dying.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Tail Gunner, Holy Smoke, Public Enemy Number One, Fate's Warning, Hooks in You, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, and then you close with an epic Mother Russia. I mean, come on. I know it's not. Seventh Son or Power Slave, which is my favorite, or Peace of Mind. And I'm not trying to make an argument it should be in anybody's top five or anything, but
Yeah.
it needs a whole lot more love than what it gets.
Yeah, I had a hard time with it only because I felt like it was a little. It felt like Bruce's first solo album. I felt like had influenced that album. Um, you had Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. There was. It sounded a little bit more
Right,
hard
'cause
rockish.
it was gonna be on a soundtrack, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was. And there's a different version of that song that I think Bruce released on one of his
Yeah,
greatest hits. But a Tail Gunner is, I think, just as
that's
good
a
else. And I think you and we were talking about that. Where I Tail Gunner, I think is like another Aces High. It's just such an
yeah,
awesome, hard hitting war song.
yeah.
Other great, Assassin, and that is definitely an underrated album, underappreciated. But I had a hard time with it. I listened to it when it came out, and I didn't shelf it. Um, but it to me it I was such I love Somewhere in Time and Seven Son. It to me it didn't hold up compared to those two.
And to me, like, their first 5 to me were, like, untouchable. And then the next 2, like, the whole set thing going on, they get a little bit more melodic, a little bit more progressive,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying they're terrible albums at all, but just for me, for when I got into the band, I got into their more aggressive side, and
Hmm.
so, the songs from No Prayer, to me, fall right in there around Peace of Mind, Power Slave type.
Yeah. Ron wrote thought you were going to show X Factor. And
If I had X Factor, I would.
X Factor,
I
I think
don't have
another.
it.
I like that one. It's the one after it that I
Yeah. Yeah, Virtual 11 is their demolition.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
repetitive. I always felt there was too much repetition
Yeah,
going.
I that's kinda what I felt. I felt like really kinda starting with X Factor, even though I like it a lot. I think starting with X Factor is when they really kinda got the repetitive bone going,
Mhm.
which is why Brave New World to me is really the last great Maiden album, in my opinion. I think they've got some songs here and there across the rest of the albums that have come out. I just think Brave New World's the last really great one they put out.
Yeah. Rick and Records wrote a lot of this is about at what point you were introduced to the band, and that's yeah, kind of spot on because um, I got into Maiden during the late '80s. I've got a friend who I think he'll listen to Dickinson, but he's a Deano purist, and he likes to poke at people, and he's like Dickinson sucks, and Deano's the only way, and he goes back to the original, and Burr being in the band, and um,
And there's a different perspective to be said from that from the people who were there when they came out.
yeah,
So I appreciate their. But one thing I will say about Maiden, real quick though, is unlike a lot of people, I don't think Killers is better than the debut. It's got a better production for
yeah,
sure, but the songs on the debut are so much better. I think
yeah,
I think the move from Dennis Stratton to Adrian Smith, and I love Adrian Smith, and I think he really kind of came into his own with Number of the Beast. But I think I would have loved to see if they could have done at least one more album with that Stratton Murray combo.
yeah. Let's see. Ron wrote, "Sorry, but Deano's Battle Zone is better than the first two Maiden albums." And I've got both of the Deanos, but I think I've only listened to them once or twice. They were, I got them just a few years ago, so I'll have to go back and give them some listens.
Hey, Rick, I've got mad respect for Blaze because, and I understand that they ended up having to cut some of the songs out of the set because he can't go in the at the high register. I love the love X Factor, like Virtual 11. I think his solo stuff is fantastic. The Blaze
Yeah,
Bailey solo stuff is great. I think his solo stuff actually catalog wise, like overall, is probably better than Bruce's solo stuff, just as an overall. And I know that's a touchy subject on some people because Bruce has the higher range, but maybe, just maybe, Blaze could be a better overall singer. He may not get as high, but I really dig his. He's kind of got, like, I won't say he mirrors Danzig's uh voice as far as like what he sounds like, but he does have that baritone register that I think is really good and it suits him.
Yeah, I haven't listened to a lot of Blaze's stuff. I've got one of his, I think either his first or second solo, and I've got the double live CD, and I've got a few Wolfsbane. So I appreciate him. I think that's
Yes,
huge.
yes, Rick, more
Huge
soul.
detail.
That's what he has. He has more soul in his voice.
Yeah, I
That's
can see that.
that's where I was trying to go with it. I just couldn't put it there.
Yep, and he keeps plugging away. I love it. You know.
And even the band he was in before Maiden, Wolfsbane, had some
Yeah.
really good stuff.
Yep. I've got a few of theirs. All right, next one. I'll share this one without any remorse. Poison. And yes, I do have I have all the poisons, but this could very well be my favorite. And Richie Kotzen, if I'm pronouncing
Yeah,
his name correct, Richie added so much to this. I mean, it's obvious when you
I
look.
mean, he's a better guitar player.
Yeah, and
Period.
this is much bluesier. It's got a
Mhm.
lot more blues to it, almost even a touch of southern rock. So songs like "Stand" and "Until You Suffer," "Fire and Ice," "7 Days Over You," still got a little ballady stuff. But this album should have, and this was
Was
90.
something to believe in on that one, or was it on the one before?
That was on the one before this.
Okay.
But this was 93, so this is when grunge was grunging, and this one
Yeah,
got passed by, and
and
it should have
hip
been
hop was hip hopping.
in hip hop, yeah. So that album should have been huge. It's a great album, and I think Richie had a very strong influence on
Did
that.
you ever hear the stuff from Kotzen and Adrian Smith?
Yes, I've got the first one. I haven't. I think they have a new one out, and I haven't grabbed that one yet. And why
Well,
Three Dogs with Sheenan and Portnoy. That's a great band
uh,
trio. And
what
yeah,
was
Flesh and Ron says Flesh and Blood is my favorite, and that way, yeah, that's a just great album. I think there's so much.
what first three albums are kind of like a best of all together, quite honestly.
Yeah.
All right, I know I'm going to piss a lot of people off. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose one of my CDs. I thought I only had three or four, but apparently I picked out five CDs. I'm going to try to sprinkle some of these in. So, in 1987, Def Leppard released Hysteria, which at that time was really being called the sellout album.
Hmm.
Because you've got the first two albums, which are perfect albums. Pyromania, you see them kind of slipping in to that kind of pop rock feeling. Hysteria, they go full blown. I don't have a problem with Hysteria. The problem people have with is the following album, Adrenalize.
Yeah.
And I get it. Um, I think if Vivian Campbell would have had a chance to be on this album and it wasn't all written by Phil Collin, I think some of the songs get better because the perfectly rated album that comes next, Slang, is garbage. Euphoria to me is like a mix of Pyromania and Hysteria. I love that album. I think it's the last album really good that they did. But you can't tell me Let's Get Rocked, Stand Up, Kick Love and Emotion, um, or, let's see, Tear It Down, White Lightning. Those are some really killer tracks. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying it's, I'm going to put it in their top three.
Hmm.
Um, but this severely had some really kick ass songs on it one of one of I think probably the most underrated song on here, and they did a video for it, was "Stand Up, Kick Love into Motion." I think that's a really good song. It's not the first four, but it's not slang for damn sure.
Yeah.
I'd probably rate this about a 5 out of 10, like point of entry, but I think it gets usually rated like a 1 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and revisit that one. I never got it when it was released, so I heard the singles, the MTV videos. I know it took them, like most of their albums, a long time for that to come out after Hysteria. I
Yeah,
like Hysteria, but um, as was mentioned on here, that one was way overplayed. I mean, you can go anywhere without hearing songs um, from Hysteria. There were so many singles, so yeah, it was just oversaturated. So the later, nothing was gonna top that as far as its popularity. Uh,
yeah.
but I still plugged away for a while on their albums. I did get Slang. There was a few songs I liked, maybe two or three. The rest was just yeah.
I went back to try to revisit it. I think sometime last year because I had bought it. When that one come out, I think they came out like 96 or something. I didn't buy it then, but um, yeah, I remembered it being bad. Then when I re-listened to it, I was like, yeah, it's still bad. Like, I mean, you can listen to an album and 20 years later, you're like, oh, I missed some things, or your taste in music grows, or you
Mhm.
mature in your music taste. And then just some albums are just bad all no matter how old you are.
Yeah. Well, and you have all those albums prior to compare it to. So
Right.
somebody, if it was the first, as was mentioned earlier, if somebody grabbed that album, they had never heard Def Leppard before, maybe maybe those songs would connect to them, and that would be their
Right.
album.
That
But
was, I mean, the songs on that album really were the first that I heard because when that album came out, the videos for those songs was around the time when I was actually when I had access to MTV. So and of course some of the older stuff from like Hysteria were on videos too. But I mean, like, have you ever needed someone so bad? Was a video that was played regularly. Let's Get Rock was played regularly. Stand Up, Kid Love and Emotion was played regularly. So I mean that's the Def Leppard I started with. And then I go back and hear their earlier stuff, and you can just tell the earlier stuff is miles ahead of even Hysteria.
yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like the old adage. People are like, "I wish it had been Lars instead of Cliff that died,"
yeah,
and I think some people would have been like, why couldn't it have been Phil instead of Steve?
yeah,
I'm not promoting anybody died. Let's just understand that. But I'm just saying, some
yeah.
people
What
would
if?
have rather
What
had
if?
Steve Clark still be alive.
Yeah. No, everybody, folks are gonna think that. What if? All right, time for some doom.
Oh yes,
Trouble, Run to the Light gets overshadowed by the first two albums, and
yeah.
one I think is every bit as good. I don't know about the production. I'm not a production person, so somebody may say, "Oh, well, it was produced by Jim for Farashi." I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I know he's produced a bunch of albums. Um, they had Dennis Lesh on drums, so I think they had a new drummer on this one. But the rest, Ron Holzner was on bass, so there was a little changeover in the band between
Mhm.
the first two albums and this one. But this, one of the earliest ones, I picked it up just on a whim in a record store, and once again, yeah, this was my first one that I heard. I love the first two albums, especially the original self-titled. This one gets foreshadowed or gets overlooked by the first two, and then I would even say the self-titled one that comes after it. But as
Mhm.
far as Doom and Wax is on point on this one, and Bruce and Rick are their guitar playing's
Yep,
top.
absolutely. All right, let's see who else I can piss off. This man, actually, I could have went with maybe about 3 or 4 albums, because they have a period where they have 3 or 4 brilliant albums, and then just kind of go down for a little bit, and then come back with some more brilliant stuff. Um, 97 is when this album came out. I got into Megadeth in like 94, 95. Well, maybe 93, really, around the time that Countdown came out. But Euthanasia was actually the first full album I heard by them. So when this came out, it was definitely when Cryptic Writings came out, it was definitely different. And apart really from um, Almost Honest and Trust, which are the first two tracks on here,
Mhm.
I think it gets so much better as as the album goes down. I think Mastermind Use the Man is great. Disintegrators got its good speed metal stuff coming back. Um, Secret Place, She Wolf, which is just a brilliant song they do
Yeah,
live.
love that one.
Um, FFF, which is basically a Motor Breath ripoff. But I think this album is fantastic.
Yep. You'll get no argument from me on that one. That's when I got that, I thought that was great, and it's different. Um, can't say the same thing about all the albums that came after Rust in Peace, but I liked that one. It was different enough, but it still was crunchy.
I just was so surprised they went from that to Risk.
Yeah, see,
'Cause
and
I felt like this album was heavier than Euthanasia, and Euthanasia is a top five for me because part of because it's the first Megadeth album I heard all the way through. But I mean, with some of the songs on that album are just heavy as hell. They're not fast like first four albums, but he's got some sort of almost doomish type songs like Black Curtains. I thought I knew it all. Those are some great. They got some real doomy kind of riffs to them.
yep, yeah, definitely no argument on that one. All right, so you were talking about bands people love to hate, and I think Beavis and Butthead they would be having a meltdown on this one.
Winger.
Winger,
I
pull.
don't know why I knew that, but it's
Yeah,
like that's the first band that popped in my head. Winger sucks.
that's because yeah, the whoever their little friend was on Beavis and Butthead, he had Winger, and they would just tear him.
Stewart.
Stewart, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So this is, and I appreciate the first two Winger albums. I like some of their ballads, but for a band that can pull, did a decent job pulling off Purple Haze. I like their first two albums, but this one really was a surprise. It was a lot less, even though they never went what I would consider full hair metal. Those guys weren't dolling themselves up with the makeup. There was maybe a
Right.
little hair product, but not.
They were more in the realm of like arena rock, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I mean, Winger got his. I believe I don't know if he started with Cooper, but he was touring Cooper and working with
Yeah.
him.
I think that's probably like his big start was with Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he had a band prior to. I don't know where he originated from or what his earlier, but the guys, they're awesome musicians. I mean, every single one of them. This is a great hard rock. There's still a little bit of that late 80s, early 90s glam hair metal thing. I know some people hate the term hair metal, but yeah, super group, Ron saying, and I would definitely say early Winger definitely had
Yeah.
outstanding music, and that's a great album.
I just don't think that Kip doing pirouettes on stage really worked to his advantage like he thought it maybe was going to go.
Yeah. I think he was definitely being pushed to be a male sex object, and
Right.
a lot of the lead singers did. That going back to the Poison, even the one I showed earlier, uh I can't remember the lead singer's name. Michael.
Right, Michael.
Yeah, Brett Michael. I mean, there's I don't know that I need to see that. I'm sure the lady folks love that, but
Yeah. I mean, and that's all that was for.
yeah,
That's all that was for.
yeah, yeah. Because of course they had a lot of those bands had a strong female following. More power.
Yep. Yep. All right. I'm going to go back to the vinyl. And you know what? I'll do this one next. It'll aggravate Ron just because of the band it is, and just in general, but I don't care. Divine Intervention by Slayer. I was actually going to go with Diabolus and Musica, but I'm going to go with this one instead.
Hmm.
Um, you just don't hear a lot of people talking about this. And I get, when this came out, it's 93, 94. Um, like kind of like that Winger album that comes in where you've got that emergence of grunge, and it's or I prefer to call alternative rock because I think grunge was more of a fashion style. I think
Yeah.
the only band you could really ever consider to be complete grunge out of the big four they call grunge was really Nirvana because they were the grungiest sound. Pearl Jam wasn't a grunge band; they had way too much blues going on, and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains were metal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But this album, it gets overlooked. They had like a couple videos, like Ditto had a video. Um, well, there were some like really killer tracks on this thing. Really expands more into Tom Araya's songwriting too, with some of the serial killer stuff, but
Yeah.
like stuff fictional reality kind of goes into that. I don't really want to call it melodic vocal style that Tom had, but it's kind of like fictional reality, where he kind of actually had like a semblance of singing to his voice with that song.
Yeah.
Circle of Beliefs, 213, Serenity of Murder, Mind Control, um, Killing Fields, Sex, Murder, Art. First couple of tracks, this thing gets discarded a lot, and I think a lot mainly because not just like with Slayer, but a lot of the thrash bands around 94, 95, 96. Even the ones that were still doing thrash, they were, largely ignored because new metal was coming out. You had all these different, um, groove metal was a thing. You had the grunge thing was going on, and
No
you know,
metal.
some people abandoned metal altogether and went to hip hop and stuff like that. So that's a really good album. I couldn't put it in my top five, but it go probably in my top seven at
I
least.
would say it was their last great album, and it to me. It reminded me a lot of Rain. It was short, intense. The songs were just they didn't have
Yeah,
any of the longer songs. It was no nonsense. It was
it
it.
sounded like they kind of stripped Seasons a little bit, where they didn't put as much meat to it. Like there weren't a lot of fat parts.
Yeah,
You know what
no,
I mean?
it
And it
got right to business.
yeah,
Yep, yeah, great album. That was a good pick. So the next one, I know everybody on here will appreciate the band Overkill. I ended up getting this one as a cutout CD, so I don't think I paid a whole lot for it. And it was probably maybe a year or two after it was released. And
hmm
I didn't, despite the fact that I was listening to Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, I somehow I overlooked Overkill during the late '80s, so I didn't get on board. I think I heard one of their albums, maybe 90, 91. It didn't hook me right away. And same thing with Exodus. But I think I'm trying to think. I had picked up one of their CDs prior to this one. I got this one and I liked it. In hindsight now, when I listen to it, I definitely see uh, a stronger Sabbath influence on the songwriting. I
yeah.
wouldn't. It's a doom,
Bobby basically
but
said it was their Sabbath album.
yeah, it's got more of a yeah, just maybe it's the song structures. I think a lot of it also is the vocals, but I think it's extremely overlooked. I've seen people say that they preferred the WFO album over this one. I prefer
Mm, no, I wouldn't. I'd,
yeah
I'd take I Hear Black over WFO.
yeah yeah
Definitely.
nothing wrong with that album either. I think
Scott
yeah,
Metalhead says hello. I don't remember him last time.
yeah, and let's see. Ron says still an Overkill album. Yeah, just as they ramped up Sabbath worship on it. So Overkill, yes, there's you can pick up an album and it can be completely different, or it's got a different
Yeah,
production to it. But Overkill's Overkill. It's kind of like Motorhead.
yeah.
It may not
Never a bad album.
you may not want you're like I don't know if I want to listen to that one today, but you're gonna come back around to it because
Yeah,
it's
absolutely. Let's see. I'm new here, says Scott Metalhead. Well, guess what? You're welcome here.
yeah, cool.
Simon, you gonna go eat, baby? No? Okay, whatever.
And let's see.
Ah,
Ron said WFO is one of my least favorite Overkill albums. I hear Black as yeah. So that's
production
kinda,
for me on that one has a lot to do with that one.
I just didn't have any songs that really stuck with me on
I
the
mean, Gasoline Dream's good. Fast Junkie's good.
yeah.
Um, I mean, it's not a trash album by any means. I
Mhm.
mean, it's like a 7.5, probably. I mean, it would definitely go in like my bottom three overkill. But even
Yeah.
like we said with Testament, bottom three overkill is better than what most bands ever get to.
Yeah. Ron said, he feels like it's the production on that one, and that could be a good chunk of the problem.
But what's funny is it doesn't really matter what the production is. Dee Dee's bass always sounds good.
There are some bands, there are some albums out there that people slag the production, and um and I can't know there's one that I'm constantly comes up. I can't think of it now. It'll pop into my head later, but oh,
Justice for All.
Sabbath. Um, what is it? Born Again, the one with the
Yeah.
devil guy. I I don't know that if somebody goes ahead and they remix it or they tweak it. I'll definitely listen to it, but I like the album the way it is. That's how I'm used to hearing it. I what came before it. It's so production wise, yes, the Dio albums and the Ozzy albums sound better, but um that album with Gillen, I like it the way it is. I don't know that I'd want it to sound. Ron said Years of Decay is great. Sometimes the production just the band may look at it and be like, ah, that's crap. But for those of us, that's the way we're used to hearing it, or it may add to the what
Like,
makes
quite
the
honestly, I
album.
thought the production on Injustice for All fit that album so good.
Yeah,
Like, because when I first started listening, I'm not thinking about production. Like I said, I got into it like 3 years after it came out. And so I didn't have any clue about a lot of things when it comes to, how albums are made. I just knew I heard it and it was brutal as shit. And I was like, that's what I want to listen to.
yeah, and the same thing with the bass. At this point, I don't know that I need to hear it with bass. That's that's the album. I'm used to it.
Right. I feel like it would sound maybe they would have more of a too polished sound, I think, sometimes. Because, I think that's a problem with a lot of modern metal records that are put out. Too many of them are so over polished that they don't sound like the instrument anymore. It's just it's too bright, too thick of a sound,
Yeah.
and that doesn't scream rebellion and aggression, as much as say, Sabbath or Death or something like that.
Hmm.
I'm gonna ruffle feathers with this one. I know for a fact, and probably could have picked a couple albums by this band. Their '70s output's definitely their best. Um, '70s Aerosmith is definitely better than '80s and all that kind of stuff. In the '80s, they did, they hit the snag, but then they came back with Permanent Vacation, Pumped, which is my favorite '80s Aerosmith album. People think they kind of went a wrong direction with Get a Grip, and they really thought they went a bad direction with Nine Lives. But I think this album is stellar. I
That's
mean, just to start off, the first three songs on here are their singles, but after that, Taste of India, Full Circle, Something's Gotta Give, Ain't That a Bitch, The Farm, which is probably my favorite song on here. I don't like Pink all that much. Attitude Adjustment's a great song. Finish off with Fallen Angels. This thing is about a 7.5, 8 out of 10. And people, I found this for just a few bucks and used. So
yeah.
I thought it was great when it first came out, like what was it, 96 or so. Um, I I still love it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Definitely underrated. A lot of great songs on that. All right, the next one, I don't think anybody would have predicted I'd pull out an album by this band, and there's metalheads that may not even know who they are. I would anybody that was listening during the '80s and the '90s will know them, but this album, when I heard it, I'm like I wish more people knew of it. Um, it's I don't see any mention and hardly any mention of them. I don't know if the other albums really touch this one, in my opinion, and that's Steel Prophet. And this one, Book of the Dead, kind of has a um, concept album. I mean, I don't know. Um, it kind of has that feel to it. When Six Was Nine, which is the lead off track, is so good. Such a great song. Tragic Flaws, Escaped, Church of Mine, Burning into Blackness. It's just a great, uh, I don't know, there could be elements of speed metal, but I would say it's just a traditional metal album. You put it up
Yeah,
there, Aiden and Priest, and this is another band that I always envisioned. I used to get annoyed seeing, when Priest and Maiden were touring, and they'd have they'd have some band. I'm like, I don't want to hear that band. I don't want to go and see System of the Down or something like that. I want to, there's all these great American heart metal bands that would be great to open up for some of the bigger ones. And so these guys, I don't know, this would be supremely underrated, but I think the band is, and that album, once again, that should have been selling. I don't know if people were able to even find the album. It was, I think, Nuclear Blast was the one that released that one, and I think
yeah.
one or two that prior to that one. But yeah, anybody that's watching this, if you've not heard that album, you need to, give it a listen online.
And if you haven't heard of Steel Prophet in general, I first got into them. Um, but it was around 2001, I want to say. I went to the CD store or music store called the Sound Garden in Virginia Beach, where I was stationed at. And I had picked up a couple Metallica tribute albums. And one that I picked up was called Overloaded, I think was what it was called. And Steel Prophet did a version of Fade to Black. When I heard it, I immediately looked on the thing to figure out what band that was because their vocalist, they've had more than one, but the vocals on that song I'd never, other than Priest and Maiden, like you said, really heard a vocalist like that before. And Rick sent me a CD that I've got of theirs. It's the first six songs are like demos, and then the rest are like covers. So they got like um, Ides of March leading into Purgatory, Iron Maiden, Fade to Black. There's a cover of "Don't You Forget About Me" on there, which is like
Mm.
the weirdest cover out of all of them.
Yeah, Ron, I think had mentioned that. I don't know that I've heard that. They've done a lot of cover songs. They did some great Maiden cover songs, but yeah, I'll have to look into that. Don't you forget about me.
Scott Metalhead said that he thinks that the modern production sounds like AI. I won't go quite that far because I've been bitching about modern production for about 10 years. Um, but he also said that pre 70s albums need to be reproduced. And the only one I would maybe argue with is Rockarola because even the band has said like the songs were there and you could tell the songs are there. The production didn't come out the way they thought it was going to. And I think that leads a lot of people to not liking that album.
Yeah.
All right, one of the few on here, or one of the only ones actually, that is my favorite by this band, and is their most underrated album. When this band first came out, they're originally out from like Philadelphia area, and they were dressed like the glam scene, but they didn't sound like the glam scene because they were a lot more bluesy. And then when they came out with Heartbreak Station, they
Mm.
really showed how bluesy they could go. And they got bluesy and ballsy at the same time. And I think this is a fantastic album. This one is still climbing. Um, and I love night songs. I love Long Cold Winter, but this is my favorite of theirs. They get really just kind of down and dirty and bluesy and just, um, it, it's just fucking awesome to me.
Yeah. That I forget when that one was released, but That's yeah. I was big into Skinner at the time. That's probably not too far off when Native Tongue, when Poison released that, and I loved to see some of the hard rock bands or inter
90,
bands doing a little bit more of a bluesy sound. Tangier, there were. Um,
1990.
okay, so yeah, that one was a little bit before Native Tongues, but I yeah, I love that. And that reminds me, that Poison album I showed earlier. Um, I think Gary Rosington from Skinnerd, I think he co-wrote or maybe did a solo on that album. So yeah, that was cool when the bands were doing that. And I actually gave that Cinderella record a spin just I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. I still haven't gotten the one that comes after that one though. I need to track that
Still
one.
Finding.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one too.
yeah, and that one's
I
been.
actually prefer those two to the first two.
Yeah, they're different. I mean, they're and even Tom's solo album. I got to see him live in Nashville shortly after his. I think he's had two now, but the first one to me was just a natural progression from what he did in Cinderella. So that
Mhm.
thing, if any of you out there, haven't, that's another one that could have pulled for underrated. Um, Solo albums sometimes can be drastically different. I wouldn't say it was a carbon copy of Cinderella, but it was.
Right,
It definitely had. It wasn't just his singing. It was the songs themselves and the guitar.
right.
All right, last one for me. That I pulled it for the 10, and so I had this one I posted a couple of weeks back, and this was my go-to album when Ozzy died. It was the first one. I thought, I don't know that I want to. Holding back tears. I didn't know that I wanted to listen to Blizzard or Bark or Ultimate Sin. Probably would have been my second choice, but Osmosis. And this album, I'm not going to say it's like, some of the ones you've mentioned. I don't know that I would put this as like his, top three or maybe even top five. But
Right.
when, I just want you, I picture him just pouring out his heart to Sharon. Ghost behind the eyes, see you on the other side. That song, listening to that, my little man, where
Yeah.
Steve Vai playing the guitar work, and that was for Jack. Um,
Old LA tonight.
Old LA Tonight. There's so much emotion in this album. Ozzy's singing is probably at his peak on this.
Barry Mason is in my top 10 Ozzy solo
Yeah,
songs.
yeah,
When we did that video a while back
yeah,
on GTR, I think it was
yeah.
my number 10. Yeah,
What a great song. And that's a great song, lead off song. And then you guys, I think we're talking, and somebody mentioned Mr. Tinker Train
yeah.
from No More Tears. Those, what great songs to lead an album off with. So I would definitely say this is an underrated, extremely underrated
Oh,
Ozzy album.
yeah, definitely,
Why is
definitely.
this not available on record? Of course, you can buy that $500, $700 set and you get it, but
It's
I
not even it's not even that cheap anymore.
yeah, yeah. So it eventually
Nothing is ridiculous.
Epic Epic Records, so they'll eventually it'll be released again. Or for the
I mean,
first time, because I don't think that was ever officially released.
no,
Not
I mean, do I make three mortgage payments or do I buy that box set?
no,
I'm like, no, it's not going to happen.
no, just wait and eventually it'll be available for what, $30 and
I don't know if it ever go that. I could probably see it coming down to around like 150, 200, which wouldn't be bad. But when you're talking 3 grand, nah,
yeah. Uh-uh.
absolutely not. No.
No,
All right, I got three to choose from for my last one. Which one's gonna get me in more trouble?
the most trouble. Go with the
Yeah,
most.
the most trouble. You know what? I'll stay out of trouble for this one. All right. I only really care 30 times 30 is 900, I think. Oh, oh, never mind. She was talking to the dog. Why do you think the dog's going to do math? You're going to teach her math. Okay, never mind. Um, anyway, I really only prefer the original lead singer for this band as far as their catalog. I don't think they ever came anywhere close to being even as good as their last studio album with Sebastian Bach. I think Skid Row went down the fucking skids after he left. I
Mm.
think the only decent album they did was the most recent, The Gang's All Here, which actually it really reminded me of vintage Skid Row. But I think Subhuman Race gets absolutely no credit whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, the first two records, you got a lot of the videos for the first one. You got Slave to the Grind, which is their best album. But I mean, songs like My Enemy,
Mm-hmm.
Firesign, Bonehead, Frozen, Face
Yeah.
Against My Soul, Medicine Jar. God, Medicine Jar has such a that's got a sick groove to it.
Yep.
Break It Down, Iron Will, and they didn't do like they did on the previous album. They didn't put like three ballads in it. I think Eileen is like maybe like the only ballad on here.
And even then, it's not your typical ballad. It's
Right.
Sebastian. Sebastian shines on that record. That's a really good album. I got that one on CD originally. I do have the re-release, and yeah, I some of those songs are just hard hitting and just great melody and grooves, and that's a great one.
To me, that one and their second album was when that was to me that's the real Skid Row. They were trying to be something on the first album, and
Atlantic,
then
Atlantic
you could
got hooks into them, and
yeah, but then you could tell when that second album when you first put the needle down on Slave to the Grind, that title track, you're like, okay, there's a whole nother era going on now. It almost feels like now there's a new sheriff in town because those
yeah,
first record songs were written already before Baz came into the band. Um, so he really didn't have a whole lot of say in anything in that first record, but you could tell where he really his lyricism, got to shine out from those two albums.
yeah. Yeah, Sebastian annoys me to no end, but
That person.
but he is a fantastic singer. I love those three. I never got around to getting any of the other Skid Row, and I did hear. I think I've heard one song from that last one that you mentioned, and it was getting good reviews. But I yeah, I'll stick with the original. See,
Ron says, I think their problem was there were 4 years between Slave and Subhuman.
yeah, and once again, it was when it was released, metal was at an all-time low in popularity on radio, and MTV wasn't doing the metal videos, and
Yeah. Rick, yeah, because Headbangers Ball ended in '95.
yeah,
I mean, and Rick said, great album, terrible cover.
yeah,
Um, Ron said, Midnight Tornado was a great precursor to Late to the Grind. Yeah.
yeah, yep. That song was quite different than the rest of the tracks on there.
I'm
So
going to go ahead and show my two
yeah,
singers that I had since I do have them out. This is
yeah,
the one that's
do it.
going to cause some issue. I don't care. I think this is a fantastic album from Motley Crue. Generation Swine never should have been recorded, at least with
Mm,
Vince anyway.
yeah,
This this kind of gives them this is like a modern at the time take on early Motley Crue. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say it's an instant classic by any means, but I mean, the, they got Fake's a great song. I think Punch to the Teeth by Love is cool is good. She Needs Rock and Roll is a fantastic song. Um, you got Drag Strip Superstar, which is good. The ballads are and then they end with a Tubes cover of White Pumps on Dope. So I mean,
yeah. I never got around to getting that one, so that's another one.
that's the tour I actually saw him on too, and Vince actually was singing well. So and then the last one I got is Unnatural Selection from Flotsam and Jetsam. I know
Yeah,
the first 3 or 4 albums are what people really mainly know,
I
and
only
they're
picked one of theirs.
the last four that they put out have been like really, really great. But this one right here, it's a hidden gem. This is the second album I had ever heard from them. This came out in '99. The one I had heard before from '97 was High, because I had heard about Flotsam obviously through about Metallica, where Jason came from, and
Yep.
never really had a chance to get into them. But this is really good. This kind of really gets right back in them starting back on that trend upward of being thrash again.
Yeah, I appreciate they've been re-releasing a lot of their 90s stuff and probably into the 2000s. So I've been
Yeah.
picking the some on
My,
vinyl.
my local store has a copy of My God on vinyl, which I had picked up recently on CD.
Yeah, me too. I got the a bunch of the ones with the cards. So let's see. Ron wrote, as great as the Karabi album was with Crew, New Tattoo was the closest they ever came to the classic Crew.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
also
almost pulled the Karabi Crew because it is my favorite Motley Crue album. But I don't know how many people really underrate it. I think maybe it's underrated for Crew purists who weren't very happy when Vince left the band. Um, but I mean, you have to be able to discern when an album's, even if it's with a different singer, is better than the stuff they put out.
yeah. All right. Well, I've got one. You had mentioned Wasp earlier, and that got me to thinking about one album of theirs that I love. Still not black enough, or
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
black enough that you can't really make out. I guess it's the Crow.
It's black enough
Uh,
where I can tell it's black.
yeah, at least they got their name in blue. But I love this album. It's different than the others. It's Blackie solo album. I mean, I think he had uh, Bruce Kulick's brother. I can't remember his first name,
Bob.
but yeah, Bob Kulick, I think, did some of the co-writing and did the guitar work. I don't remember who was drumming on this. Love it. It's there's just some like Skinwalker, Goodbye America. That song gets me up. Um, some uh, good more ballady stuff on here. There's always, most Wasp albums are good for at least one, hard rocking ballad. Uh,
Yeah.
Forever, Scared to Death. That was a song I think about AIDS. Uh, Very underrated, underappreciated, and hard. I think this was import. This was Castle Records, so it was pretty hard to track down in the states.
Hmm. And I actually think that Wasp as a band overall is highly underrated. They really got lumped in to that glam crowd because of when they came out. They were so far from that. They
Yeah,
were more of like a shock metal type
them
because they had
and
everything. They had everything that '80s actual metal had sound wise, and then they took Alice Cooper and Kiss and then made it 10 billion times, to the nth degree.
yeah.
With stuff. I don't consider them a glam band or a hair band
No,
whatsoever.
no, Lizzie Borden's the same thing.
Yep.
Little, the makeup and the stage attire that they had, but they were a little too dark to be glam, and certainly musically
Oh
not
yeah.
not glam. They were hard hitting,
Absolutely.
great bands. Yeah, Lizzie Borden, that's good stuff. So I wish we had a nice big finale with fireworks or something, but I will end up having to get off pretty soon because I've got another event. 4 minutes, but it was, there were things that needed to be said.
Right. Yep, definitely. At least it wasn't 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah, we're whittling it down. Maybe next time we'll get it down to an hour.
I started looking at the ticker as we were like into our third pick, so I'm like, I said 35 minutes. I don't think that's gonna work. We were already at like 32.
No, I've watched, you know, he gets it done in like 5 or 6 minutes. I'm like, wow, I got to work on that. Well, we at least have, I think, Ron and Rick hung with us here, so that's cool.
Ron, Rick, and I think George probably.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I don't know that George. Well, now there's three, so maybe he's back on. But so yeah, we appreciate you guys watching, and
Absolutely.
I'll go back through and look through the comments a little bit more closely later, and I got a few others I need to watch because I know there was Ron might have posted something today I didn't get to watch, and or actually Tim, I think you posted one this morning.
I didn't do one this morning. I did one yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's morning. The one
Yeah.
that you were doing on the I can't
The
remember
heat,
what it was
the,
now.
the heat wave thing.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
I don't remember what record this came off of. Oh well.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I gotta put my records back together.
Oh yeah. That's the part I don't really care about when it comes to doing videos is putting everything back.
Yeah, Ron, that's right. You did the beat up records, the ones that yeah, I've got a few that look like something's been chewing on them.
I don't have records that look like they were too, but I definitely have some jackets that were
Yeah,
supposed to
that's what
be
jackets have.
supposed
Yeah,
to be disintegrated.
yeah. And then of course you get your records that are ones that are sealed and like the Nasty Savage. I think Ron posted.
Yeah.
I think there's about
I
every
have the same
that
issue with that
year.
same nasty savage EP.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. I had a Tomb Mold album that was the same way, but it didn't
Yeah,
affect the playing. So
some are okay. If it's a
right.
slight work, when you get the
Yeah.
ones that it's like this. It's like
When
yeah,
when it's jumping instead of skipping, that's not going to work.
nope, 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 nope. That's when you take the album cover, you frame it, and you stick it somewhere for
Or
to,
do like I do and
the
use it to
record.
measure dividers.
Yep. All right, friends. I'm gonna have to call it an evening here.
All right, man. We'll get together soon with another thing.
Yeah, Ron's saying DRI four of a kind, and that hurts. That's one that you don't want to. Yeah, you don't want it to be wavy. That's one
Yeah.
I get on record. I've got a cassette on that one. Well, thanks again, Ron. Appreciate you guys watching and Rick, and thanks Tim for the cool idea because this was I think we covered a good basis there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, man. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the X. I believe that's how we end this thing.
All
And I'll
right, man.
speak
Later.
to you. Take care.
You too.